Could you talk a little bit about how you met Justin Goff and decided to partner on Copy Accelerator? And has that relieved a lot of anxiety for you? And like what some of the pros and cons are of having a business partner and your personalities?
Yeah, so it's actually funny that they're related because I decided to do an event in early 2018. I did it at the Wynn in Las Vegas, and I taught my copywriting methodology for the first time because I finished up. I had a health supplement company that went from 0 to 1 million the first year, 1 million to 23 million in the second year.
Hey, welcome to the Secret Scale of Podcast. I'm Troy Erickson from Email Secrets and Email Paramedic. I'm here with Stefan Georgi. If you don't know Stefan, he is the $1 billion copywriter. He's also started several businesses. He has investments. He has a piece of a sports agency. And I got to know him through the Copy Accelerator Mastermind. He's an amazing all-around guy, and I'm going to ask him some really cool questions today. Stefan, how's it going?
It's going great, Troy. Thank you for having me. Pumped to be here.
Yeah, of course. So I know a lot of people watching this, and people will be watching the replay. This isn't our first time jumping on some sort of live video together. So for anybody who's new, I'll briefly go over. Roughly a decade ago, maybe a little bit less, you were working a lot of odd jobs. You were briefly in college in Florida, and you then had a sales job, and then you were working at like a nature camp of sorts. And looking at where you are today and where you are then is really funny because in Copy Accelerator the other day, you posted this screenshot of a post from 9 years ago, and it said, work, 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 get money, pay bills, no money. Work, 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 get money, pay bills, no money. What was the biggest mindset shift that you had, and when did you have it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was really happy when I saw the Facebook post come up. I mean, I was happy because it just made me laugh, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And I thought, wow, what a mindset shift I have had. So, I mean, there's a lot. One of the biggest is, I think this is relevant to a lot of people, especially those who may be earlier on, is realizing that you don't need permission from other people to like go out there and sort of pursue like greatness, or even just pursue a change in your life, to pursue a change in your circumstances, right? Like, I think I'm getting a text from a guy I met at a networking thing a few weeks back, and he's sort of like, hey man, he wants to meet in person, which to his credit, he's been persistent. We're going to meet next week for lunch, but he was like, I really think this copywriting thing, I want to learn more. He's in like a mortgage guy. But I shared with him the recordings from this 8-week mentorship program I did, which was for newbie copywriters. I shared with him Freelancer Freedom, which is like a course on how to get clients. So I replied, I'm like, hey man, I've given you this stuff. So like, you don't need to wait to have lunch with me to like be going through all this stuff and starting to learn and starting to actually, figure out how to be a copywriter and be a freelancer. And I really thought about that specifically because, again, it's like he's almost waiting for that permission, or like he needs to have lunch with me first. But it's like, no, he just needs to take action and do it. And I think that's a huge shift. That, and then of course, having mentors and guides is really important, because if you take massive action, but it's the wrong type of action, then it's actually detrimental. So having those people in your life, whether for me, it was my wife, Laura, was kind of the first mentor on the journey towards freelancing entrepreneurship. And then there's been others along the way.
Sure. So to go back a little more into your story, like when you were doing all those odd jobs, your father ended up dying of cancer. Obviously, there's no things didn't get better right away. Then you went to Vegas and you met Laura. Would you say that's like the defining moment where you started to see what was possible?
Yeah, it's a huge moment because it was just the belief of seeing somebody who was doing something that seemed like a dream job, when they were actually doing it and being successful, right? It's like weird in a way. I don't know. It's like, I was writing, I do some SEO blogs for my sister, worked for a company in marketing. So she would give me a couple SEO kind of content blogs to write. And I was doing a few of those for her per week for like a couple $100. But I started like a drop shipping store that failed after reading the 4-Hour Work Week. I mean, I didn't even know what drop shipping was. I just sort of tried to create this store, but like, I didn't really know who had actually made like good money, like online. Right. And then suddenly I met my now wife, Laura, at this poker table, and she's making, several $1,000s a month just writing, fun advertisements for people, like, to sell random courses and products and SaaS things and stuff like that. And so it's like the paradigm shift is like, oh, it's actually possible. So that was a turning point, because suddenly I did know somebody who was doing it, and it wasn't just BS. So yeah, huge turning point.
Do you remember the first piece of copy you wrote?
Yeah, for sure. It was for Brian Zimmerman. It was for a list opt-in type of software that he had created and launched in a Warrior Forum as like a Warrior special offer. He paid me, I think, $147 for the copy. I just basically swiped Laura, and I was, like, oh, I didn't know what swiping was, but basically I'm like, hey, like, what should I do? She's like, here's some stuff I've written, model off of that. And I was like, okay. Honestly, like when I look at it, there's some good elements and some cringy elements, but it wasn't bad. And Brian, I got to him a day early, which he commented about when he replied to me. He was like, wow, it's like a first. And, then he hired me for several other projects. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So looking back at where you were then and where you are now, one thing that I've gotten to know about you as I've gotten to know you is that sometimes you have a little bit of like social anxiety or just maybe anxiety in general. That's something that a lot of copywriters struggle with. What is like how do you operate your business on a day-to-day basis and get past that? And what advice would you have for other copywriters who feel the same way?
Yeah, I think a lot of us are drawn to internet marketing, digital marketing, freelancing, because, behind the computer screen, the anxiety isn't as bad, right? You see that all the time. I laugh about people who are so gregarious and outspoken online and in Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff. And then you meet them in person and they're like really quiet and reserved and kind of like, hi, so I think a couple of things. Like, one is to recognize that it's okay to take it as a gift, right? To be an introvert, to have social anxiety, it's fine. A lot of people feel the same way. So there's nothing wrong with you. You aren't broken. Like, half the people, feel the same way you do. The other thing I think about is the easiest cure for social anxiety is having a genuine interest in other people. Because which is, by the way, just a great life trait anyway, right? So, if you're learning about other people and asking questions and finding out about them and being curious, it takes the spotlight off of you, but it also, helps that people like to talk about themselves, right? There's half the people don't, half the people do. Probably even more than that. Like, I think even introverts like talking about themselves, but so it's a really good sort of way to think about it when you're in those situations. And then I would say, it gets a lot better with time. Like, as you, like, putting myself out publicly as a copywriter or marketing expert, even I'd already sold, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stuff before I kind of put myself out there publicly, besides my own little circle of marketers and copywriters I knew. And, at the time it was kind of scary, but now it's like second nature. Same thing, like speaking from stage was, scary the first time I did it and the first couple of times. And now I don't feel nervous really at all. So the more you do something, the more of like a more natural it becomes, I guess. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think for me personally, honestly, like, part of the reason why I like being like a guru. I mean, I'm not, I don't look at myself as a guru, but right, someone who's like a coach and mentor, all that. I do it because I love impact. I love helping people, but like an advantage that's come from that is that people want me to like share, they want to talk to me and share, like, there's a context to these conversations, which actually makes it easier than when I'm going into like a bar with a bunch of strangers who are like working 9-to-5 jobs. It's a lot harder for me to relate to people there versus in our industry where it's like people who are all doing the same thing. So we have a commonality. So it's probably one of the reasons I love our industry so much, because I feel like much more comfortable talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's one thing too. I talk to a lot of people and they're like, hey, I work at home. How do I find friends? I'm like, well, a lot of times I just go do things I enjoy. So whether it's work or whether it's going to the gym or like playing music, and just try to go places where those people hang out and you naturally find friends. So that's one thing that's worked for me, because I definitely get anxiety too, a lot of times, just with all the things that are happening. Another question too, could you talk a little bit about how you met Justin Goff and decided to partner on Copy Accelerator? And has that relieved a lot of anxiety for you? And like, what some of the pros and cons are of having a business partner and your personalities?
Yeah, so it's actually funny that they're related, because I decided to do an event in early 2018. I did it at the Wynn in Las Vegas, and I taught my copywriting methodology for the first time, because I finished up, I had a health supplement company that went from 0 to 1 million the first year, 1 million to 23 million in the second year. and learned a ton, had a lot of success during that journey. And between that and having written for other clients, and then I sort of wound down the supplement company where for a variety of reasons, it was like a Christian supplement company. I'm very respectful of religion, but I'm not like a hardcore Christian. I just felt like the marketing was a little bit aggressive, and I didn't know if I felt comfortable with it. So I stopped taking on acquiring new front end customers, but I kind of wound it down. So I had more time, and I'm like, man, I really want to teach my copywriting methodology. I've never done it. Created a live event in Vegas. I had something like, I think, 55 people came and paid around $12,000 per ticket for a 2-day event. It was all my own network, right? Because I had all these people who had just seen my meteoric rise with this offer, who knew that I'd written copy back in the day. So that was great. A bunch of really high level people taught copy for 2 days. And then through that, a mutual friend was like, oh, you should meet Justin Goff and talk to Justin Goff. So one of the attendees actually introduced me to Justin. I was familiar with Justin before that, but we never talked. So we got on a Skype call, we chatted. There was no immediate kind of nothing happened, right? We just sort of chatted and it was cool. And then a few months later, I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, I would really like to do another event, maybe, a new lineup, and get Craig Clemens and Justin and other sort of people to speak at it. So I had to call off Justin and pitched him on speaking at this event I was going to do. And, he said, yeah, but I can most likely do it as long as it's not these dates. Great. Nothing else happened. A month and a half later, he messaged me, hey, I've kind of got this idea for this kind of copywriting training program. Do you want to talk? I said, yep. We got on a call, and that's where we sort of pitched the initial vision for Copy Accelerator, which is our mastermind we have now. That vision was actually kind of a lot different from what it's turned into. So the vision was, all these business owners have in-house and internal copywriters. They have no idea how to train them. They're not, that happy with the results that their copywriters bring. And, it creates this bottleneck for them because they are, not getting winning offers as often. So we can sort of be the in-house, the trainer of in-house copywriters for different high-level business owners. That was sort of our plan for Copy Accelerator. But as we started bringing it to the market responded. The market said, no, the business owners themselves wanted to join, and then freelancers wanted to join as well. So yeah, we ended up launching and changing it. And the program has gone through evolutions and is continuing to. I'm actually looking and discussing with Justin later today some pretty significant changes in a good way, I think, for the program. As far as the business partner thing, right? So we talked about it. Then I flew out to Austin for another project I was working on, and made some time to meet with Justin. And that evening, we met at the Whole Foods in downtown Austin. If you've been to downtown Austin, you probably know where that Whole Foods is, because it's the mega mecca of all Whole Foods.
I've had some meetings there.
Yeah, right. I feel like everyone has. It's you probably could sit there for a day and see 25 internet marketers from our industry and entrepreneurs go through there. But we talked to just make sure we sort of were aligned, and that our goals were aligned, that we liked each other, because we never met in person. We were about to do this mastermind, and there was enough alignment. So we launched. But honestly, before the first event, which ended up being a great success, I thought about quitting or leaving, and I messaged Justin, and I actually said, hey, we need to do a couples therapy, but for business partners. Because I felt like he was not listening to my input, right? And sort of wanting to make decisions. And then I just felt like our communication was poor. And, I don't know. And it was tough. So to Justin's credit, he was okay, thanks for sharing that. We got a call, we discussed, we figured it out. We figured out how to work together in a more sort of back and forth way. And it's been amazing, but Justin is very different. I think I only was able to do that with Justin. I think Justin's the best business partner I've ever had, hands down. I've had a lot of business partners, and he's totally different from me. I'm offense, he's defense. I'm really optimistic, everything's gonna work out. He's what's the downside here? I'm let's do fucking everything at once. Justin's let's focus on a couple of core things. Right? You need both of those people where we're very different and opposite, and it's actually incredibly valuable. But it's really hard if you don't have experience, because you feel like this person is, man, they're so different. We want to partner with ourselves, but we don't. That's not actually good for us. It's not in our best interest, right? Because then there's just two of you, and all of your attributes and virtues are there, but all of your downsides and your flaws are there too, right? You want a partner who's very different, but you have to recognize that and actually be willing to communicate and talk through those challenges so that then the partnership can thrive. And that's what happened with Justin and I. So it's been great, but like you really need to think about that with your partners. Like really, you don't want a partner who's the same as you.
That's awesome. And there's a couple of people commenting, just saying like, "Hey, I've never heard that before." So it's cool to hear all these different stories that many people haven't before.
Right.
One thing that is really funny that you've mentioned before is that both you and Justin were running different supplement companies. You both hit 23 million in 1 year. So it sounds like you're in a very similar position, and then you just chatted, and eventually this all came to be. So I mean, was the situation almost identical for both of you before you met?
Well, I think it was different in that, like, yeah, we both were part of supplement companies that hit 23 million. I mean, Justin was, his partner in that company was Alan Baylor, who's very operational. Justin was able to focus on the creative and the copy, and which is hugely important, right? And the strategy. I mean, a lot of stuff. And Justin was they would not have hit 23 million without Justin, and he was the main reason they did. But he had that operational side. I think maybe the difference was for my company, I didn't have a partner, so I was basically like the more of like the CEO of it. So the one thing that I brought, and like one thing I brought, I guess, is the experience of like hiring and sort of more like team building and things of that nature, which to this day, when we hire, Justin's like, you go do that. I don't want to do that. Right. So I think that was a little bit different, but then Justin had done more. He had a way better network than me. He had so many more high level sort of contacts. I had some, but not nearly as many. He just understood direct like mail and other forms of marketing way better than I did. I had way more freelancer experience than Justin. I'd written for a ton of clients. So, yeah, we both hit that 23 million mark, and there's probably some shared experiences there, but I think there was actually a lot of differences as well, which ended up being complementary.
Perfect. Yeah. So another fun question, I guess this one's a double-edged sword. And you can probably guess what the follow-up question is, but I'll start with the more fun one. What is the best, most fun business idea that you've ever had?
Oh man, I feel like I have a lot, and I used to joke that I just need like an implementer, which is really not, it's only half of a joke. I'm going to give, after you, why don't I give a couple? I'll give one to start. Okay. One of my favorites is a reality TV show called $1 Million Divorce, which I think would crush it. So basically, when we lived in New York for a year, when my wife Laura was pregnant with our daughter Eden, there was this channel called AWE, A Wealth of Entertainment, and it had these shows like buying private jets, buying yachts, and there was these like rich couples like Jane and Mary, or maybe sometimes, but or Bob and Mary, are looking for a jet, and they'd look at like 3 or 4 different jets and tour them, and then they decide, oh, we're gonna get the Gulfstream, and it was like just porn. It was like rich people porn. I was like, oh my god, I love this, right? But then I started joking with Laura. I'm like, well, what happens when they get a divorce? Like, who gets the jet? Because in some cases, they're very like yucky couples, and so I think like honestly a reality TV show where you follow like, millionaire kind of couples and like, specifically like Orange County, Las Vegas, South Florida, places like that as they get divorced, and you sort of go through the battle of who gets what assets. You tell their background story of how they met. They fell in love, where things went wrong. And then you follow them as they go into like, the legal process, and they battle over the assets and who gets what. And I think that reality TV show would crush it. I mean, I shared it with Dave Meltzer, who's kind of done a lot of his own TV show, and then the guy who basically created The Real World. And they were both like, "Oh, you should do that. That's brilliant." I haven't, but I think that'd be good. The reason I haven't though is because I think, does it bring more pain into the world, right? Showing people getting divorced. I mean, if those families have kids, I think that there's sort of like a karmic side to it where it would crush. But I wonder if maybe so that's the reason I haven't done it, but I think that's a really good idea. And I recently met the millionaire matchmaker woman, I forget her name, and I told her about it. And I was like, but it's actually perfect because you do $1 million divorce. And then once they're divorced, and you help like the men to find, their next true love. So like there's the immediate follow-up. So there's a nice kind of upsell built in right to the sequence.
Of course. It really shows too, just like drama is a huge part of copy too. And we always talk about curiosity and emotional stories, but I feel like there's just a very like personal, like dramatic element that people are always looking for. And I'll throw in one thing too that I've been thinking about the last couple of days. On the very first project I ever worked on, Hustle Island with Greg Berry and Jason Bojo, our audience was BizOp. So we had this idea one day, we had an email list of over 100,000 people at the time. And we were like, hey, what if we just like offered to interview people, because people like to talk about themselves. So we're like, okay, well, we'll try it. And everybody who signs up, we'll just post them on a blog and put a share link, and they'll share it with their friends. And then we'll like have a link in there to join our coaching group. So we thought, okay, great. Our open rates at the time were not good. So maybe there were about 10 to 15,000 people that saw this email. Over 2,000 people filled out an interview form. And
Wow.
we couldn't even finish the project because there were just way too many people. And that's just like one fun idea I've had. I've always wanted to like go back and like put interviews on a site and like attract organic traffic and monetize that. But on the same token, you could probably guess this question is coming, but what is the worst business idea that you've ever had?
Oh, I have a lot of those as well. I mean, the worst and best was, well, one of them would be, I have the domain terribleparker.com. And the idea was that it would be like, it's like literally just an app where you take pictures of people who have done a terrible parking job and you put it onto like the app and you put those people on blast. That's literally it. So I actually had the app built. That was when I was living in South Florida. And so, because there's so many bad parkers in South Florida and they parked over the lines. So like you can really just like take a picture of this terrible parker, put it on, and that was it. I mean, it's like a funny idea, but it's like not very deep. Like, what do you really do with terrible parker? Plus, you're like, maybe it does, but this was 2011, Karina. So I beat whoever did it. But like, like also though, you're putting that person's license plate on the internet, like, which maybe would get you in a lot of trouble legally. So I don't know. It was like a funny idea, but like probably not really the one to go all in on, so yeah.
If anybody wants to steal the idea, what comes to my head is all these Instagram pages that are just about one topic and they're funny and it gets a lot of organic traffic.
Yeah.
Somehow drive that somewhere else. It kind of sounds like a Josh Snow project. He was talking a lot about that at your last Copy Accelerator event,
Right.
After he spoke. So maybe an idea for someone, but that is pretty funny. Now, what are some of like the most, like, what are some of the best moments that have made like you feel good in terms of like copywriters that you've helped? The one that comes to mind for me is Michael Roisin. So for anybody who's not familiar, Michael came to a Copy Accelerator event. He almost left because he felt so much imposter syndrome. Today, Michael literally makes over $100,000 a year, probably more. He's gotten rid of a lot of his anxiety, and like there's so many personal things in his life too that are better. What are some other awesome stories just about people overcoming even more than copywriting?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm so blessed in that there are really just like so many of them. I mean, you look at somebody like Scott Phillips, who is now, crushing it with his crypto stuff, doing 3 million plus per month, with like a sort of high ticket crypto offer. But, he was messaging me, I think he bought RMBC, my copywriting course. And then he, was like took all of his money and basically joined Copystarter Lite, and then went like all in on like one like launch of like, I forget what the product was, something in financial. And you parlay that into like a couple 100,000. And he's basically kept parlaying his wins into where now he's doing 3 million plus per month. And if you don't know Scott's story, when I had my podcast, Road to a Billion, which Troy, you were on, but I haven't been active with the podcast. It's bandwidth issues, but I don't know. I mean, Scott was like basically the Australian porn king back in the day. It was something like some absurd amount, like 90% of the bandwidth of like all internet in Australia was going through like sites that Scott owned. But he was like a drug addict. He basically went to jail for several years and, was like living a tortured, hellish life. And then, got out of jail, had nothing. And the fact that, through kind of the copywriting advice and, then Copy Accelerator, he was able to, and then now, Alan Salt and other people have helped him a lot as well. But like the fact that he was able to go from nothing and then back to where he is today is, that's really inspiring. And then, I get so many cool messages. I mean, like Scott Conradson messaged me recently, just basically, and he's gonna be on Justin's Justin did an interview with him. I think that's going like live on Friday. But basically, he messaged. He said, "Oh, if I haven't already made this abundantly clear, thank you. About a year ago, I bought into RMBC, made just shy of 12K in 2020 because of that. In February of this year, I joined CA Light, and I'm in disbelief of how much my life has changed. Not just financially, I'm getting closer to being the man I want to be, husband, father, provider. And the people I now have the privilege to call friends are among the best human beings in the world. So yeah, from the bottom of my heart, a big thank you to you and Justin." And then he sent me a screenshot. So in this year, so 2020 made 12K, 2021, he's made 152,000 so far. And I mean, there's just a lot of people like that. And it's just like the best feeling in the world. Cause like, for me, more so than even business owners, like I love helping business owners, but if a business owner goes from, 17 to $20 million in revenue, it's like not that impactful. It's like, cool, like I can get that yacht faster, or like, hey, yacht's not fair for people, like revenue wise, but like I can do that upgrade on my house. It's like, cool. But you go from making 12K to 150K, and like, that's like life changing. You have kids, like you have a wife, you have a mortgage, like you move into a better neighborhood, your kids go to a better school district. You can go on vacations, you're less stressed out. So you have better quality relationships with other people. It spreads through the whole world. So to me, like, yeah, every one of Scott is a business owner, but he went from like zero back up. So, but yeah, people like Michael Roisin, Scott Connerton. I mean, there's just literally hundreds of people. And that's like, you, bro, like you went from like 4K a month to like, we don't have to say what you're doing per month now. That's a whole lot more. You're in the 100 million mastermind with me, which is not cheap. We'll put it that way. So yeah, that's the best feeling in the world, man. I love it.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing those extra stories. And yeah, Scott's crazy because it's like with this whole like crypto, I don't even understand crypto at this point, but what he's doing with it is amazing. The way he's marketing it, it's amazing. It's all over, nothing held back, and everything there. But one question that I think some people in our industry, especially people who coach, might have is, so your audience, there's a lot of business owners, but there's also a lot of freelancers. How do you kind of let them all come together and like join Copy Accelerator, or just like consume your content in general? Because a lot of times you're speaking to very different people.
Yeah, I really am. It's honestly, it's an ongoing challenge, especially like with the mastermind. I mean, realistically with Copy Accelerator, what it started out, it was probably about 80% business owners, and now it's about 80% freelancers. The shift happened sort of not fully intentionally. We introduced, Copy Accelerator Lite, which was sort of a way for people who were earlier on to get into the program and get, a few less of the perks. But, it was very successful. Suddenly, we had 150 plus freelancers joining. And then frankly, when you're charging less money with freelancers, they need a lot more than a business owner needs, right? When you run like going back to that 100 million mastermind, which is like 100K a year. It's like 3 like masterminds per year. They have some additional real estate ones you can go to if you want, but basically 3 per year. They do a live weekly training call, but like 3 people maybe are on those calls, 5 people, nobody goes on those calls. They have a Facebook group, but like nobody does anything in the Facebook group. It's literally, you're just paying $100,000 a year to go to 3 weekends a year, basically, right? And great, happy. I'm renewing this second year. Like you just joined, value is actually totally there, right? But when you're like a freelancer and you're like, man, I'm making $3,000 or $4,000 a year, and I'm about to invest, $3,000 or $4,000 a month, and I'm about to invest $1,450 a month. Like I need, this has got to work fast, right? And so they need a whole lot more. They need to get better quickly. So they need training, they need feedback, they need like mindset help. Then they need like jobs and opportunities. So it's actually a lot more work. But so as we started spending more and more time focusing on the freelancers, I think the business owners started to be like, well, is this really the place for me? Right? I should put my copywriter in there more. And so that's why I think you've seen the shift. Now, I'm thinking pretty seriously about launching a high-end business owner mastermind in the pretty near future. That'll be under the Copy Accelerator umbrella, with potentially some strategic partners. I don't want to go too deep into that right now, but there's sort of some ideas I have. Because we still have like, Steve Gunn, Scott Phillips, like we have some great business owners in CA, but it's hard to serve 2 people, at one time. So really, I think honestly, you do need to get clear on that. For us, for CA Light, which is our main focus, that's freelancers. And then we're going to figure out another, kind of path and program for business owners and separate them. And even my marketing, my email list, Yeah, the biggest thing there is like I honestly talk more to freelancers probably on my email list, but then I do drop value on just copy in general and like marketing and strategy and things like that. And that's, that's still valuable to business owners as well. So, I guess it's like if my list isn't all about like how to get freelancer income, if it was, business owners would leave it. But, it's a lot of it is around ideas and strategies. And honestly, even for a business owner, if I'm talking about how to not screw up getting jobs, like business owners reply all the time, like, oh, freaking freelancers are always screwing this up. Like, thanks for sharing. So for whatever reason, they seem to enjoy it too.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you for that answer. It sparks a lot more for me. I'll ask you that later, but for the purpose of the interview, that kind of leads me into the next thing. So obviously you guys are doing an amazing job with Copy Accelerator, and not just because I'm in it and I love it and it's helped me tremendously, but I mean, there's so many people joining. There's so many people with results that are unarguable, like it works. So you're doing a lot of things there. It sounds like you have a couple of things, like other projects you might be working on. What's really exciting right now in Stefan Georgi's world that you could share with people watching?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is. Copy Accelerator is a huge part of it for me. I mean, I think like the big shift I'm having, and this is like not sexy sounding, but it's important, is treating Copy Accelerator more like a real business, which sounds funny, but basically like, right around, let's say around $5 million a year in revenue. It's a pretty high margin business because it's coaching. Even though we've got a ton of different things that are in the program, but we sort of had it to where it's like this loose kind of like group of people, affiliate constellation of people coming in, helping. There wasn't a lot of clarity. So kind of like breakthrough or shift I've had on this is like, okay, I really think we could probably double or triple the size of the program without breaking it, without, diluting the quality of the product of what we're putting out. But in order for that to happen, we need to kind of grow up, become a real business. I need to probably become like the CEO of it, which I literally messaged Justin about all this earlier this morning, but I've been thinking about for a long time and mapping stuff out, and we're having a call later today. But like, that's exciting because I actually want to put more of my energy, effort, and time into Copy Accelerator, but I want to do it in a more intentional way. So for example, we got really clear with the org chart, right? And like every single role that within our business and the different kind of departments, right? So there's like sales, there's marketing, there's customer or member experience. Those are actually the biggest ones, right? But even within marketing, okay, there's like cold traffic marketing. We're launching a cold traffic funnel soon. Then there's sort of the warm marketing, which Justin and I do. Then there's the event marketing, because we want people to come to our events and buy tickets and then join the mastermind. And someone has to own those different categories, right? Who owns those? And then who's responsible for all of those people? And then that person's reporting to our COO, right? But when you have an org chart like that actually is really clear, and then you know who the right people are. In some cases, we have TBD, right? It's me, Justin, or Brian, our COO, and Blake are all kind of doing this right now, but we know we'll put someone in that role. It makes it clear, okay, like how do you prioritize hiring? When you put people in those positions, you're like, hey, here's an actual path. Like you're here now. Here's what you need to do. Here's how we measure success. And then if you're successful, here's the path. You can move to this place and then to this place and to this place. So it creates a real path for people within our organization to where they're working towards, something like more than just today. They know where they can go professionally and career-wise. So you have to actually set a real vision, right? What's the real vision of Copy Accelerator? What's our sort of one sentence, like kind of purpose and vision statement? And then when people are over here and you're like, this is your box, own this box, and they start doing stuff over here, you're like, hey, come back to this box. Not in a mean way. I don't want to put people in boxes. We're entrepreneurs. We hate being put in boxes, but you need to have role clarity. And so this sounds really not that sexy, but it's actually so important. And the thing I thought about was like, okay, Holy Island Health, I treated it like a CEO. I had people in these I had an org chart. We actually we had, a vision, and we had sort of our principles that we were guided by. And we went from 1 to 23 million in a year, which is a wild increase, right? My call center, my CEO, COO, and me all got together maybe 2-3 years ago, did the same thing, mapped it all out, realized what's our onboarding process, what's this, what's that. That went from maybe like 3.5 million to we'll do close to 10 million this year in revenue. So I'm like, the realization is like, oh crap, every time I actually treat it like a real business and we get a real org chart and we get the right people in the right places and we have real SOPs and KPIs and all the boring shit that we as entrepreneurs don't like. Every time I've done that, my business has seen explosive growth. And yet for some of my businesses, I don't do it, right? I'm sort of just like half-assed with it and whatever. And so I'm honestly really excited about what I have for Copy Accelerator already. And then the people we're putting in place there, and then the growth that we can drive. I mean, I really think we can double or triple in size, like I mentioned, without losing any of the value. In fact, making the program way better and more valuable and way more dialed in. So and then it's funny, the last thing I'll say on that is it's something that Justin's talked about, right? Is like focus on, it's so hard not to want to do 25 things. People always say, how do I do all this stuff? But I'm like, it's always like, I shouldn't. There's some stuff I'm going to do. Like I invest, I like crypto, whatever, great. But like, if I've actually focused on this business that exists right now and, brings me $1 million plus per year income while helping hundreds of people to transform their lives. I'm like, if I actually just focus more on that, like I'll make more money, more lives will be changed, impact will be greater, all this stuff will happen. So it's kind of nice because it's reminding me not to get sidetracked with all this other stuff, but to really focus on growing, something that's already working.
Yeah, and strangely, it does seem like an unsexy answer. Maybe it's to most people, but me personally, I think that's exciting because, like, at my heart, even though I love to write, I love to get on calls, like, I kind of miss the days sometimes where I would just wake up, go to my desk and just work the whole day, like operational stuff, like setting things up and just like having a vision. And that stuff really excites me. But yeah, it's like as an entrepreneur, you always feel like, oh, I should be doing something else. I'm behind. Or which one of the 87 things should I pick to work on today? But it's just timing. It's like there's always something to do, but it's whatever is most important right now. So before we get to a couple of questions that people have, since this podcast is called The Secrets of Scale, do you mind sharing 1, 2, maybe 3 things that are really important in your journey of getting to where you are now that have really allowed you to scale, whether that's mindset or something tactical?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there's a lot. I mean, so I really think the org chart thing I just shared is actually really important, right? If you're running a business, if you're an offer owner, that's really important. Another part of it, right? I'm going to talk about scale instead of it being a specific offer. I'm going to think about more as principles or things that can be applied regardless of if you're scaling your freelancer income, if you're scaling your business, if you're just scaling your effectiveness in life, whatever it is, right? So another one I always just go back to, and it's like very obvious, but it's like your network and building that network, which means really, socializing online, Facebook groups, things like that. But really it means like going to live events, right? I just think about that constantly of like all of these, like I was at my wife, Laura did a mastermind in the Scottsdale area this last Saturday. And I'm like sitting at a table, we do these breakout tables. So it was like me, Glenn Ledwell, Amber Spears, and someone else. Tiana was there, a few other people, but like, I was like looking around, I'm like, all right, like Glenn, I met at Mimosa Mastermind. Glenn runs Flight Club, which Troy and I are both part of. He runs like, 8-figure companies and stuff like that. Amber, right, is like an affiliate marketing genius and has, sold something like $450 million worth of stuff or helped to drive over $450 million worth of sales. And I'm like, I met Amber at an event, then I met Glenn at Amber's event. Glenn's there speaking, supporting Laura. And then I've spoken at Glenn's event. I've presented at Amber's event. Then when you're on stage as an expert, right, guess what? You have more authority and credibility, more people, want to be a part of your world. But like, Troy, you came to my first Freelancer Freedom event. That's where we met. I mean, my best relationships are all through live events. And those relationships have, easily made me $10 million plus in the last like 5 years, probably more, frankly. So there's just no substitute for going out there and meeting people and then understanding the long tail of that as well. That it's not that you're going to necessarily, like I talked about the thing with Justin, right? I just got connected through a live event. Somebody connected me to Justin. We didn't meet at a live event, but then nothing happened for a while. And then suddenly we run like a, multi-million dollar, program together. So there's just no substitute for a good network. I mean, even like if I ever fell on hard times financially, there's hundreds of people I could hit up and be like, hey, I want to write a sales letter for you. Like I'm in a cash crunch. I mean, hopefully knock on wood that this never happens at this point in my life, but I could and be like, it's usually 50. If that works great, if 40 is great, I'm kind of like in a bad place. And I could easily get like 20 to 30 people to all say, yeah, to pay me $50,000 and like literally get $1 million plus. I mean, it'll be a lot of work for me. I don't want to have to do that. I hope I don't have to. But that's like the power of the network, right? And so, God, I know it's so obvious, but like really, 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 you it's night and day. Everything's easier. Doors are open for you. The right connections are made. You're put in the right position. People speak and vouch for you. You have more credibility. You have more preeminence as you go places because there's other people who already know who you are. Like your net, like this is like the most simple thing you can do because it doesn't cost any money. Ultimately, going to events can cost money, but building up a network and continuing to level that up is like not necessarily an expensive thing. But it's the reason as you get more money, you invest more in other masterminds of even higher level people and stuff. But like, I know that's like not like, I'm sure Alan shared, I didn't watch his yet, but I'm sure he shared like the gnarliest, most mind-blowing tactical stuff ever. And, you know, I get it, but like really anything can do that. I mean, affiliates, that's why I drove to 23 million, right? I went to live events and met all these people who promoted my offer and got affiliates. Like every solution can come from your network. It's like your network is the solution. It is the answer. So that's just a huge one.
Yeah, I love that too, because I talked to some freelancers that I coach, and like the biggest thing that like I feel like there's this invisible wall when you're a freelancer, and when you cross that wall, you're not successful. So at that wall is kind of the point where you believe that something that's not on a stat sheet can help you. So for example, like going to an event, you can't quantify like, oh, we made this many sales, we had this many leads, whatever it was, but that event is going to pay for itself exponentially. So I always try to explain to people that that's a true thing. And I'm glad that you said that too, because a lot of people, they're a little scared to make the leap because they can't see anything that's solid on the other end, but events are amazing. So with that being said, we're going to go into a couple of questions now. Nick Verge had a question. He said, do you have any mindset advice on transitioning from freelancer to offer owner?
Yeah, I mean, love it. And shout out Nick Verge. Love Nick, fellow Arizonian now. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, the biggest mindset is that if you're going to go into an offer owner, you're kind of shifting. It's sort of what I talked about from you're basically a professional team builder and you're like you're CEO, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means your superpower really as a CEO is like building a great team, setting the vision, and then making sure that the team is, you know, going towards the goal. Right? Sounds pretty simple, and yet not many of us can do it, and not many of us can do it well. It also means you doing, you know, less of the work. You have to put the right people in place, and you know they have to know what success looks like, and you have to kind of keep an eye on them and make sure things go in the right direction. But if you know, read the book, The E-Myth. It's a great book, right? There's sort of these different roles. There's like the manager, the technician, and the visionary. I believe those are the ones, right? So as a freelancer, you're usually the technician. You're the one actually doing the work. You're the air conditioning repairman, right? As like the, you know, once you become the business owner, that's no longer the case. You're sort of more like the manager, but if you're the manager, that really you want to probably become like the visionary or whatever, like the sort of highest level person is. But it means you can't also be the technician, right? Because if you're trying to like repair the air conditioning, but also book sales calls, but also do this, then you're just going to be overwhelmed, frustrated. Things just aren't going to get done. So the hardest part for someone who's a freelancer first, moving into business ownership, is to remove themselves, you know, from the technical work and almost you feel guilty, like, well, I'm not doing the work, but that's the whole point of why you're becoming like the owner is like, you know, obviously you may still early on, you're lean, you're bootstrapping, you're a copywriter, maybe you still write the copy if you're launching an offer or whatever, fine. But as you're growing, you really want to be able to pull yourself out and put the right people in the right place. But on the counter to that is you don't want to hire unnecessarily just because you think you need to, because you're building a team, right? So really honestly hire like a CEO coach. Like I have like basically a business coach right now, a sort of a CEO coach, and Chris Guerrero, who I hired recently. He's been great. But like, you know, get a mentor of somebody who's done it before, because you do that, right? You become an offer owner, it starts working well. You're like, oh, I'm building a real company. I better get a $10,000 a month office. I need a CTO. I need like a CFO. I need this. And you just basically all of that margin, right? Like you then take it and you invest in all of these people. But if you don't have the org chart, you don't have the plan, you don't know what you're doing, then you're basically just like lighting money on fire. And suddenly you look down and you did $10 million in revenue, but you made less money than you did when you were a freelancer, right? So there's a balance to that, which is like, get the right people in the right place, but then make sure you are protective of your margins. There's the whole profit first component, right? You manage to profit. You set what your profit margin is going to be. And then you like look at that and like, based on that, based on our numbers, like, you know, who do I actually need to hire? And if I hire these people now, but they make the margin lower, am I actually happy? Unless the scale is going to be significantly more, then I shouldn't hire those people right now. So, you know, that's a huge one, I guess. And I think it's mindset, because again, you're shifting from looking at yourself as a technician to like looking at yourself as like the owner, or the way I almost put it sometimes is like as the investor. That's like the ideal way, right? Like with my call center, I'm like the investor, even though I own 75% of it or whatever I own. So like I'm on one call. Honestly, I haven't had the call in months. I haven't, I don't know, if I spent like an hour in the last 3 months on that, and it's, paid me out a lot of, significant amount of money. We're buying a $3 million building in Vegas. Like we got cash in the bank, all this stuff. But that's because the whole team's in place. So I'm just like the investor. I'm just coming in. So that's if like you have a CEO and all that. But otherwise, if you're the CEO, then look, that's who you are. You're the CEO, and then you have to own that role and not worry about being the technician. Hire the technicians.
Yeah, that's good. Another way that I kind of like to put it is it's like building a skyscraper, right? So if you're a freelancer, you're on the first floor. You got to do everything. You have to check the door. You have to let people in. You have to service the people. You have to fix leaks, everything. But as you level up, you're like, okay, I really want to build the second floor. So I need to find somebody who can kind of like manage the first floor. I go build the second one. And you just keep going up and up and up until you hit, business owner like halfway up, then investor at the top. And then at that point, you're doing pretty well. But I also recently heard, I don't remember who said this, but they were saying everybody can benefit from a coach. So even Usain Bolt, even Tom Brady, even Stephen Georgia, you all have coaches, right? So
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean the coach is better than you at everything or anything. Like nobody can run faster than Usain Bolt, but he has a coach because that coach can see things that he can't see because he's busy running. So that's a really good analogy for freelancers that are considering that. And I would highly recommend Copy Accelerator. Feedy left a comment about how he's super pumped about CA Lite. So highly recommend. So I don't think there's any other questions for the time being. So I guess I'll leave the last thing to you. I always like to have like a fun, interesting question that's different every time. What is one of your favorite inspirational quotes?
Oh man. It's gonna be like a generic one. I mean, well, I do like the whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Because it's, that's like a tribute to Henry Ford. But I think that, that one I'll move you to actually, because I have another one I really like. I like that one because it's it's so true with mindset, right? And what you believe is what happens, right? Ultimately, if you look at like, I'm going to make $1 billion next year, it's like, no, you're fine. You're not. It doesn't work like that. But you're more likely to make like $1 million than if you don't believe you're going to make any money next year, right? So, it goes back to intentionality and, kind of mindset and things of that nature. And then my other quote I love is from Khalil Gibran and his kind of book of poems called The Prophet. And it's that, I might get this perfect, but essentially work is your love made visible. Like the idea being that, if you, when we work, if it's like an expression of our love, if we're putting joy and love into what, our projects and things, like that's what work should be. And I think if that is your definition of work, then it never actually feels like work. Like I, talk about this to people all the time. I can't remember the last time I felt like I was working, but I'm like, I wake up every day. There hasn't been a day, like it's been years since there was a day I woke up and was like, I don't want to go get on my computer. I'm like literally excited every single day, but it's because I'm doing stuff that I love and I'm bringing love to what I do and trying to help people. So those are two. I cheated a little bit, but yeah.
That is really amazing too, because there's times at night where I'm super tired and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to touch a computer right now. But as soon as I wake up, I'm refreshed. So I'll share a quick one too before we sign off. So naturally, like I'm an only child. I kind of came from a place where I was like very shy as a kid, and I've naturally grown out of that. So one of my favorite quotes, it's from the Metallica song. I have no idea who said it originally, but it's advantages are taken, not handed out. And that's something that's really helped me to like be just more of a go-getter and like aggressive person and seize things. So Stefan, thank you for being on here. I appreciate it. And for anybody who wants to follow along to the Secrets of Scale podcast or check out any of my material, any of Stefan's material, there will be links below this video on YouTube. So Stefan, thank you for joining us, and talk to you next time.
Thank you, man.